When we talk about medical dramas, one of the biggest challenges they face is balancing realism with entertainment. After all, no one wants to watch an hour-long episode that's just paperwork, waiting for lab results, or endless meetings about patient charts, right? But at the same time, when a show like The Good Doctor presents itself as a story about real medicine and real human challenges, people start to wonder how close it actually comes to the truth. In the case of The Good Doctor, there are definitely moments that make real doctors nod in approval because the details are surprisingly accurate. The terminology, the depiction of surgeries, and the medical decision-making process often have that ring of truth. And that's something that doesn't happen by accident. Medical consultants are usually part of the production, helping writers and directors make sure that when an actor says something like, "We need to intubate immediately," or "Her BP is dropping, prep for surgery," it sounds convincing and matches what would actually happen in an emergency room. However, as any real doctor will tell you, the day-to-day work in a hospital isn't always that dramatic. In real life, most cases are routine, and the outcomes aren't always as miraculous as they appear on TV. Shows like The Good Doctor often condense timelines dramatically. What might take hours or even days in a real hospital is shown, happening in just a few minutes. That's where the drama side kicks in. The purpose isn't to teach medicine, but to keep you emotionally hooked. You'll notice that the camera zooms in on the patient's face. The background music swells, and within seconds, the main character figures out a solution that no one else could see. It's exciting, it's cinematic, but in the real world, diagnoses usually come from teamwork, lab tests, and a lot of waiting. Another thing that's important to mention is the emotional realism of these shows. While medical procedures can be dramatized, the emotional core often feels genuine. Doctors do face tough ethical decisions. They do get emotionally invested in their patients, and sometimes they lose sleep over tough cases. That part The Good Doctor captures quite well. It shows the toll that constant exposure to illness, loss, and pressure can take on healthcare professionals. The emotional burnout, the conflict between compassion and clinical judgment, the constant fear of making a mistake, those are all very real elements of medicine. But there are also moments where the show clearly chooses emotion over logic. For example, situations where a doctor takes huge personal risks or breaks. Protocol for a patient might make sense in storytelling terms, but in real hospitals, that would likely lead to serious consequences. Medicine is built on teamwork and guidelines, and no single doctor, no matter how gifted, makes all the calls alone. Still, it's easy to see why audiences love these dramatic moments. One of the most powerful aspects of The Good Doctor is how it centers around a protagonist who lives with autism and Savant syndrome. This is not something you often see in mainstream television, especially in a leading role that's not just defined by disability but by extraordinary ability as well. Dr. Shaun Murphy is portrayed as a surgical resident with exceptional memory, pattern recognition, and analytical skills, but also as someone who faces real social and emotional challenges because of his autism. The character immediately stands out because he forces both the hospital staff and the audience to rethink what being a doctor means. His journey isn't just about performing surgeries. It's about navigating a world that often misunderstands neurodiversity. From the very first episode, you can feel how the show wants to challenge stereotypes. Shaun isn't portrayed as a broken genius or a helpless outsider. Instead, he's human, brilliant in some areas, struggling in others, and that balance is what gives the story its emotional depth. However, when it comes to realism, there are mixed opinions even among medical and psychological professionals. Some appreciate how the show opens up conversations about autism, showing that people on the spectrum can thrive in demanding professions with the right support. It brings visibility to a community that's often misrepresented or ignored, especially in popular media. But others point out that the depiction of Savant syndrome, where someone has extraordinary abilities in specific areas, is actually quite rare among people with autism. By focusing on Shaun's almost superhuman skills, the show risks creating unrealistic expectations or reinforcing the idea that people with autism are only valuable if they possess extraordinary talents. In reality, autism exists on a wide spectrum. Some people need significant support, while others live entirely independent lives, and each person's experience is different. Still, what's commendable is that the good doctor doesn't shy away from showing Shaun's difficulties. His struggles with communication, understanding social cues, or dealing with sensory overload are woven into almost every episode. You see how small interactions, something as simple as shaking hands, making eye contact, or understanding sarcasm can be a real challenge. And that's where the show earns its authenticity. It makes viewers realize how much effort goes into things that neurotypical people often take for granted. More importantly, it gives space to conversations about empathy and acceptance in the workplace. The scenes where Shaun is doubted or underestimated by his peers feel painfully real because that kind of bias does exist, not just in hospitals, but in every professional field. From a real doctor's perspective, this representation is valuable because it humanizes medicine. It reminds both doctors and viewers that every healthcare professional, no matter how skilled, comes with. When people watch hospital-based shows like The Good Doctor, it's easy to assume that what they're seeing on screen reflects what happens behind the closed doors of a real hospital. But the truth is, the real world of medicine looks very different from the fast-paced, emotionally charged, and picture-perfect version shown on TV. In the series, you often see doctors sprinting through hallways, shouting medical terms, performing last-minute surgeries, and saving lives in the nick of time. While there's definitely adrenaline in real hospital life, it's not as constant or glamorous. Most doctors spend more time doing paperwork, reviewing test results, or discussing treatment plans than rushing to emergency rooms every few minutes. Real medicine involves long hours, protocols, collaboration, and a lot of patience. It's less about dramatic heroics and more about small, steady acts of care that go unnoticed by cameras but make all the difference for real patients. One of the most noticeable differences between the show and reality is how medical teams function. In The Good Doctor, you often see one doctor, usually Shaun or another lead character, single-handedly diagnosing a rare disease or making the critical decision that saves the patient. It makes for a great story, but in reality, hospitals are built on teamwork. Surgeons, nurses, anesthesiologists, radiologists, and other specialists all play crucial roles, and decisions are rarely made alone. There are multiple consultations, case discussions, and approvals before anything major happens. In fact, in many cases, the hospital hierarchy is quite structured, meaning junior residents like Shaun wouldn't have the final say on a complex case. Instead, they would present findings to senior doctors, who would guide the next steps. But again, for the sake of storytelling, the show puts individual brilliance front and center because audiences love a hero, someone they can root for who defies the odds. Ethical boundaries also get stretched in TV medicine. The Good Doctor often shows doctors bending rules or going against hospital policy to help a patient. And while those moments are inspiring, in the real world, breaking protocol can have serious consequences. Hospitals have strict guidelines for a reason, to ensure safety, fairness, and accountability. A real-life doctor who acted impulsively, even for the right reasons, could face disciplinary action or even lose their license. The show amplifies these moments to create moral tension, showing the doctors as not just professionals but humans who care deeply. That's what connects with the audience emotionally, even if it's not entirely accurate. Then there's the visual side. The spotless operating rooms, perfectly calm lighting, and endless time doctors seem to have to talk through every emotional dilemma mid-surgery. In real hospitals, surgeries are intense, time-sensitive, and filled with constant communication that's focused purely on patients. Dr. Mike has become one of the most recognizable medical voices on the internet, and when he reacts to shows like The Good Doctor, viewers listen, because he brings both professional insight and a relatable personality. He doesn't just say whether something is right or wrong. He explains why, and that makes his reviews valuable, especially for people who are genuinely curious about what feels real and what's purely for entertainment. When Dr. Mike talks about the show, he often highlights how it succeeds in capturing the emotional and ethical struggles of being a doctor, while also pointing out the exaggerated or unrealistic elements that are designed to heighten drama. He respects that the series tries to honor the medical field, but he also reminds viewers not to take everything at face value. It's that balance, the ability to appreciate the storytelling while staying honest about the medicine, that makes his commentary entertaining and informative. At the same time, one of the recurring things Dr. Mike mentions is how medicine is not just about the miracle moments you see in shows. It's about teamwork, communication, and constant learning. When he reacts to scenes where Dr. Shaun Murphy suddenly comes up with a rare diagnosis or performs a risky procedure with little guidance, Dr. Mike explains that in real hospitals, those scenarios would involve entire medical teams, second opinions, supervisors, and a whole chain of checks to make sure nothing goes wrong. He doesn't say that to ruin the fun, but to show appreciation for how much collaboration goes into patient care. It also helps viewers understand that real doctors don't play superhero roles alone, and that's okay. The heroism in real medicine comes from collective effort, not individual genius. Dr. Mike also talks about how the show portrays Shaun's autism with both positive and problematic elements. He praises the series for highlighting the strengths and abilities of people on the spectrum, especially showing how Shaun's unique perspective helps him excel in surgery. But he also points out that not everyone with autism will have the same abilities or challenges, and it's important for viewers not to generalize based on one character. His reactions often emphasize empathy, understanding that neurodiversity brings different ways of thinking, and those differences can be incredibly valuable in the right environment. He appreciates how the show opens the door to important conversations about acceptance in the medical community, something that is often overlooked in real-world discussions. What makes these reactions even more engaging is how Dr. Mike uses humor to keep viewers entertained while still being educational. He might laugh at a dramatically unrealistic diagnosis or cringe at a wildly inaccurate medical scene, but he always circles back to explanation and clarity. His videos help people learn about the medical world without feeling lectured, which is one RIA. Shows like The Good Doctor might seem like just another piece of entertainment, but they actually carry powerful messages that can influence how people think about healthcare. Empathy and human connection. Beyond the surgeries and medical jargon, there's a deeper layer that makes viewers reflect on what it really means to care for someone. When a show manages to make people feel something, whether it's sadness, hope, or admiration, it goes beyond fiction and touches real life. One of the most valuable lessons viewers can take away from The Good Doctor is empathy. Seeing Dr. Shaun Murphy face constant challenges because of his autism encourages audiences to think differently about people who don't fit traditional molds. It teaches that intelligence, compassion, and talent come in many forms, and that being different doesn't mean being incapable. The show becomes a mirror that reflects the importance of understanding others before judging them, especially in a world that often struggles to accept those who think or act differently. Another lesson is about teamwork and humility. Real doctors who watch the series often comment that while the hero moments are dramatized, the underlying message of collaboration is very real. Medicine is not a solo act. It's built on shared responsibility. Every patient's recovery depends on a chain of people working together: doctors, nurses, technicians, and caregivers. The Good Doctor portrays this idea, even through its emotional conflicts, by showing how communication and trust between colleagues are vital. For viewers, that becomes a lesson about life itself, that no matter how skilled or talented you are, you still need others to succeed. It's a reminder that success is more meaningful when it's shared, and growth happens through cooperation, not competition. The series also gives viewers insight into the emotional toll of medicine. It's easy to admire doctors as heroes, but The Good Doctor reminds us that they are human beings who experience exhaustion, doubt, and heartbreak. Seeing those struggles helps audiences develop a deeper respect for real healthcare professionals who dedicate their lives to saving others, often at the expense of their own comfort and peace of mind. Dr. Mike and others who review these shows often highlight how these portrayals, even if dramatized, open people's eyes to the realities behind the profession: the sleepless nights, the tough calls, the ethical dilemmas, and the emotional burden that comes with every decision. It encourages viewers to appreciate the medical field not just for its science but for its humanity.